Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the About Small Business podcast. This week, I'm really excited to be chatting to Michelle Jones of Keepl Social. Now, Keepl Social is a concept that I think would probably be best explained by Michelle herself. Michelle, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh no, thank you for inviting me. It's delightful to be here today.
So Keepl Social, can you just tell us about the concepts of Keepl Social? Because it's a platform, isn't it? But I'll let you...
Yes. It's a digital platform. And as we know, digital is a brilliant enabler. But the fundamentals of Keepl Social is enabling social value to meet the needs in society. So obviously when we talk about delivering social impact, when we talk about delivering mandated social value within procurement, within our contracts, whether it's impact within our corporate social responsibility strategy, or whether it's obviously is an individual that you want to deliver that, the platform basically enables that in its simplest form, but directing that opportunity directly to the needs in society. It's a very clever platform, so it takes care of all the complexity in the delivery of that, because actually delivering kindness when it comes to commerce isn't very easy.
It seems it's not something that's spoken a lot about in business, is it? Let's be honest. Because you're talking about delivering kindness. How does one go about that?
So for me, obviously, kindness is about an action, and I use the word delivering kindness and kind action in relation to all of these things that we talk about, whether it's social impact, social outcomes, social value, delivering corporate social responsibility. It's for delivering kindness is a word that I use to sum up all of those things. And there is a lot of people out there, a lot of businesses that are trying so hard to be a good business and to make a difference. I mean, fundamentally, all businesses are making a difference in society, because they're providing services, they're employing people, contributing to the economy. But we're talking about that added value, in terms of then what our involvement is within community, how we're supporting communities to thrive and addressing some of the needs that are in our communities alongside that as well. So it is a big ask for businesses, especially at this moment in time when everything's so challenging.
I was going to say, it is quite a significant thing, because everyone I speak to, they're talking about the pressures that they've got with national insurance rises, minimum wage, which, I think most business want to pay the staff well, but, there are implied pressures when, generally speaking, people seem not to have as much money as well. So in terms of the additional impact that you're looking to help businesses find, what might, to someone that's not really au fait with the terminology, what kind of thing might that look like?
So you've got two sides of the coin. So you've got social value, which is mandated. So if you're a business that's winning contracts through public funding, then there is social value that's tied into those contracts, and that is additional value to what you're delivering on the contract.
So as an example of that social value, what could that be?
So it could be anything from recruiting an apprentice, or it could be giving back to the local community. So just for instance, if you're a roofer, that's just won a housing contract. As we know, housing is a big theme in the UK at the moment. You've got skills in your organisations that other organisations could benefit from. So it could be that your local school or a local hospice needs some roof work doing to it. And you could do that, pro bono, to meet the regulation within your contract in the delivery of that social value.
I suppose the pro bono concept as well, that's something that certainly I would associate more with solicitors, and when they're wanting to perhaps give something back, they might do free work for certain clients. So
yes, and that meets their social obligations. Whether it is tied in with a contract and mandated, or whether it is part of their corporate social responsibility strategy. But it is that context of whether it's mandated or not. And that corporate social responsibility strategy is that moral obligation.
I was just going to ask about that. So, because the mandated social responsibility, I've got to be honest, that's not something I know a huge amount about. So at what point would a business be, I'm not sure if liable is the correct word, but I can't think of a more appropriate one at the minute.
As we know, obviously, when it comes to public funding, there's a lot of compliance.
Yes.
So that's some of the complexity around delivering social value. You've got the Procurement Act, you've got the Social Value Act, and then you've also got the Failure to Prevent Fraud legislation as well, which is tied into the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. So you've got a substantial amount of compliance that's protecting public funding.
Yeah.
Do you know? So the expectation is that if your business is winning business through public contracts, then there is social value tied into that, and it needs to meet compliance requirements.
So I suppose in full layman's terms then, what you're doing is you're helping people meet their obligations under the law.
Yes.
To help with the local.
Yes, that is one element of what we do. Like obviously I'd said the complexity within it is quite vast, so compliance is one piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah. I've looked at your website and there's a lot going on in there, and a lot that you're obviously able to offer help and support with. So what kind of business might come to you then? At what stage would someone
So we're basically sector wide. So fundamentally we're here to support the public sector, the private sector, and that's everybody from your large corporates down to your one-man bands, your sole traders, and then the social sector as well. So that's VCSEs, schools, education provisions, and we support everybody within a cohesive ecosystem, and that's providing a solution for one of the problems within the delivery of social value. That we've got a lack of connection, and actually we can, working together within a cohesive ecosystem, enable social value to work more effectively.
I think that there's a lot of that sort of joining the dots, or dots that aren't being joined amongst certainly sort of local government departments that maybe could do with a bit of support themselves. I think I'm sure lots of people know what we're talking about with that. Now, in terms of the sort of social values and social impact, they're clearly quite important to you. I have taken a brief look at your CV on LinkedIn. I mean, how did you? I'm just wanting to find out a little bit more about how you came to where you are now. Because that we've spoken obviously about sort of kindness already. That's been mentioned, and that's clearly something that's important to you, that you're very passionate about.
Kind action is something that is being embedded in my whole life since I was very young. So it's been quite a journey to obviously get here today, but I would say the last 5 years was when I really decided to commit to obviously creating the change I wanted to see in society.
Right.
And when I say the change I wanted to see in society, part of the journey over the last 5 years has been trying to understand, the barriers to actually delivering social good, and what those barriers look like, why they're there, what potential solutions were there, and how we could make it really simple and easy for people and businesses just to deliver impact, and it'd be beneficial for the whole ecosystem, for those that are delivering it as well as those that are receiving it, and so that we actually start to reduce some of the needs. So across my lifetime, obviously I've been invested heavily within my social impact work. Has been obviously something that I'm very passionate about. And it's always been voluntary. So I've always had a small business and done a lot of community work alongside it in a voluntary aspect. Obviously, I've made the transition now when I obviously have spent time understanding the complexity within the ecosystem and creating a solution to support it. I've completely jumped into that world now, so it's where I'm at 24/7. Not that I wasn't before, but before I was doing something else to bring the pennies in as well.
Absolutely, and that's always it's got to be a consideration, hasn't it?
Yes.
So in terms of, I'm just trying to picture what you might have been like at school. Were you someone that was always helping? Were you wanting to be like sort of monitor?
So one of my about my background. So I've got invisible disabilities and chronic illnesses. So as a younger child, school was really challenging for me. And I mean, when I think back now to what it was like, it allowed me to build up a lot of resilience, and a lot of strength, but it was hard. And I was around the age of 8 when I just had one of those light bulb moments as individuals, and I'm obviously stuffing my breakfast cereal into my face, and there was this chap jumping around on the television shouting about the fact that anybody, could make a difference.
Yeah.
And it was Lenny Henry at the time. It was 1988, and Comic Relief was just
I did used to love Lenny Henry,
yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. But the whole concept of Comic Relief was just exploding, and there was a person on the television telling somebody who was a child who actually was in a world where they didn't fit, or they were made to feel sort of less than everybody else.
Yeah.
That they could make a difference. So I was very much like, well, that means me. If anyone can make a difference, that means me.
Hang on, so you're figuring all this out at 8 years old?
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't know what it was, but I had been that child in class that if someone was struggling, I would help them. I wasn't academic, so I couldn't help them academically, but if they were upset, or if they didn't feel well, I would obviously take care of them, and that's just my nature. But at that point, it was like, well, I want to make a difference. If anyone can make a difference, I want to make a difference. So obviously that making a difference was already in me, because my daily actions were always like putting my arm around somebody that needed some support, always asking the teacher if there was a job that I could do. And so I'd gone into school and I'd asked if I could do a fundraiser. And I think at the time, because I was a child that was always taken out of classes to go for interventions and stuff like that, it was a bit like, oh, let Michelle just do this thing. It wasn't very encouraging, but it was the time and the flexibility to do something that I wanted to try and do. So I put together a fundraising show, and it was children who were, looking back now, at the time I didn't realise that, but children who didn't fit into that sort of education box. The children who did the slapstick routines, the comedy shows within it. They were the children who would always getting told off in class for messing around.
I was just about to comment on that, because if you're saying that this was in 1988, things were very, very different back then. That's the year I took my GCSEs, which will give you an idea how old I was back then. But no, I do recall there would have been very little understanding. There are people who I was at school with who have later found out that they'd got ADHD and things like that, and they were just loud. They were just described as naughty. Which is unkind, because it's a lack of understanding of the needs of the children in that space. Do you find do you think we're making progress at the minute? Because there are still people now, and I'm sorry to say, people of my age that still seem to believe that.
Yeah, obviously it's mindset, isn't it? And I think unless you understand it, it's difficult to be sympathetic and empathetic. As humans, we naturally judge. So I'm always mindful when somebody doesn't understand the situation that they'll make a negative judgment, but that negative judgment is only based on what they know.
Yeah.
So it's given them a little bit of courtesy for them to have that little bit of learning. I've done a lot of work within schools. So a lot of my social impact work has been within schools, with it from early years all the way through. And whilst I would say we've got a lot more understanding, we've got a long way to go. But one of the biggest issues we've got is we've got an archaic system that doesn't work to the needs that we know we have today in society.
Yeah, I think that's what's causing a big issue at the minute, because I think schools, with the academies programme, now I've no problem with academies because I'm well aware of the issues that can be faced when you've got schools under local education authority control. But with the academies, it would appear that one of the side effects, you would say, was the increase in size, certainly for secondary schools.
So schools have been large for a long time.
Yeah.
And we need big schools to accommodate growing population. As we know, growing populations support the economy. So it's sort of that whole hand in hand process.
And in fairness, you do have the economies of scale as well that go with that, as long as you've got pupils that can cope with that.
Yes.
And just kind of fit into, I suppose mainstream's the best example I can think of. If you fit with the mainstream, then that's great. But as I think, as we well know now, a large number of pupils, they're not necessarily fitting with that mainstream.
No, they're not. But I don't think they ever have. I think that's one of the things we need to be mindful of. We're very much aware of it now, and the complexity. If you've got a class of 32 children, and then obviously in high schools, secondary schools, you're going to have classes at a minimum of 32 children. That's 32 children, all with unique personalities. Now, that's just unique personalities. That's before we step into, obviously, any... And that range of needs is quite significant, even if you haven't been diagnosed with a disability, an invisible disability, neurodiversity, anything that sort of on paper says that you've got this need. You've got needs within individual children. Children can be shy. Children might take longer to learn. Everyone's got different learning styles. So you've got that broad spectrum within school that schools are trying to manage. But the funding doesn't meet the need. So we can have a large school. But if the funding doesn't meet the need, then that school can't meet the needs. I, having done a lot of social impact work in schools, the majority of teachers, it's still a vocational career for them.
I think it has to be.
They love it, and they will do everything they can to support children. Within their power. So I think teachers take a lot of stick. But I do think we need, and it goes back to that concept within business trying to do good as well. Everybody's trying to do what they can. Within the means of what they can. But and that's one of the beauties of what we're doing in digitisation, because it simplifies it. So if we make things simpler and easier for people, then actually focusing on the need becomes the priority.
Absolutely.
And that's the same across the whole scale.
I think I've often said that before. It's like, as soon as you put targets in, I mean, yes, we need targets, but as soon as you put targets in place, that becomes a focus rather than the reason that you put the target in place. And I think that's a problem that no one's quite worked out how to get round. So I mean, you've mentioned then that you've described yourself as not an academic person. What did obviously leaving school, what did 16 look like for you? Were you then sort of straight into the world of work? Was it...
No, I came of age and did my GCSEs just right on the cusp of us going into the Labour government, and at that point there was a huge focus on everybody has to go to university. And that basically for my two GCSE years, that's all we were told, just to go to university, and everybody was sat down and looked at what they needed to do. And at that point, we were in this bubble of a world where university was accessible. Obviously, that bubble was just about to burst. But it meant that people who hadn't thought that was a possibility, it was now an option for them. We had a lot of polys turn into universities, which broaden the spectrum of vocational degrees.
A lot of colleges offering degrees as well.
So it was a peak time, I would say, in terms of children being pushed towards higher education. But it being accessible, and obviously I just made that after that point. It then spiraled, but a little bit before then, obviously I'd gone into comprehensive and I was still significantly behind my peers. So I'd been born with flat eardrums, and so obviously hearing was a real difficulty for me. So
Right.
my speech and language didn't develop to, as it should. So I'd been doing a lot of catch up in primary. And when it was one of those moments again, when I'd got into comprehensive, I'd had this light bulb moment where I thought, if I don't catch up now and take my education into my own hands and rely on other people, I'm not gonna achieve. And because I didn't know what that was going to look like, that was a little bit scary. And I think the catalyst was because I'd gone from primary school where there's lots of interventions.
Yeah.
And I mean, it means that you miss out on a lot as well, because you sat learning how to read and say words properly and understand things better, because you've had that disadvantage. When you get into comprehensive, back then in the early 90s, there was no support.
No.
So obviously there is a lot of support now, but there was no support. So that being cut off, I knew that actually I needed to help myself. But I was very fortunate that there was a few teachers in my comprehensive school who were very vocational, they really wanted children to succeed, who then supported me to, and I mean, you wouldn't be able to do it now, but I did things like go to their home to do additional studies.
Right, okay.
And
it's different times, isn't it?
Yeah, completely different times. And they'd put me forward for different things to try and build my confidence.
Yeah.
So from a reading perspective, obviously my reading had been hugely behind when I'd gone into comprehensive. And there was an English teacher who she literally lived one street away from me, so I'd tootle around there to do some reading, but she'd put me forward to do things like be the narrator at the Christmas show.
Wow.
Which was a big jump for me, but it was that sort of drive and motivation for me to work towards something. But
you do sound to have been incredibly driven from age 8, basically, and then to have that attitude, because I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about the levels of support. I mean, I taught sort of a decade later than that. Mm-hmm. But I do recall, whilst we had SEN, it was, from a teacher's perspective, I have to be honest and tell you, it felt like a chore. Mm-hmm. We weren't given a huge amount of guidance, as is often the case with teachers. You get masses that you're told to then read, mm-hmm. which you can't, you're not given time to read it. It's like, go read this, and it's a leaflet and a book, and everyone wants to, because it's really important, because that's what they're covering. Mm-hmm. And with the best will in the world, if you're not following that up with training and actual time, mm-hmm. from a management perspective, looking at that, mm-hmm. then it's not going to be taken particularly seriously, or at best it's an afterthought. I've got my main lesson to deliver, and I have one child that might need a bit of support, and so I'll get a TA to come and sit with them. Yeah. And that's kind of what we were at. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because we're mainly focused on dealing with the behaviour, to be honest.
Yeah, it is, and it is all that. It's that the difficulty of managing behaviours within any setting, whether it's school or employment. And as we know, obviously, sort of, I really don't like the term SEN, but it's still referred to as SEN in schools. But that's somebody who sits in that box, that they've been put in, that doesn't go away just because they leave the education system, and obviously that goes all the way through into that work and career. So it's something businesses are having to manage as well. And it's interesting because when we look at social value, when we look at the mandated social value, and it comes to measuring and reporting, that's an objective within it to, sort of supporting obviously your staff with their needs, providing employment that is accessible and inclusive, and has that equitable provision around it. So when we look at it from a business perspective, their businesses are now tasked with what schools have been having to deal with for a long time when it comes to managing people. So it's interesting when you look at how schools have struggled, and they're still struggling. And now the expectation, and actually it's a real expectation, that businesses need to accommodate for the flexibility around disability
Yeah.
and things. But it's going back to what you said. It can't just be here's a sheet of paper and go and read it. There needs to be a lot more understanding behind it.
Well, I think as we've already discussed, and it's certainly within the teaching community, this is widely known. People do process information differently.
Yeah.
For someone, they might sit and they might watch a video and then they take everything in. Other people aren't. They aren't that auditory. They can read something, and that's the way that they take it in. And that's fine. Other people might sort of need some sort of visual markers to help them with that. But I think we, as a society, we should know by now we're not one size fits all, are we?
Oh, no, absolutely not. And that was when I was going through the process in terms of, before Keepl Social, it was Kind Currency, which I refer to as the biggest huge research project, where we actually delivered a substantial amount of impact to try and understand.
Can I just clarify with Kind Currency? Was that another business that you started?
So I started Kind Currency in 2020 when I basically wrote on a piece of paper out of frustration and anger, what if kindness was currency? And the idea behind it was, what is stopping people from just delivering social impact? Why are the needs in society growing?
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult, for everybody just to deliver social good?
Yeah.
And from the point of view of, obviously, I was doing a lot of that, and I was able to do a lot of it because of how I was managing my life, obviously, at the time. But I was trying to understand what the environment around delivering social good looked like across the board.
Yeah.
So I wrote on a piece of paper, what if kindness was currency? And then basically set about to try and understand that question. And I quickly started to appreciate the difficulties across the board, whether it's from an individual perspective, whether it's from a large corporate perspective, whether it's from an SME perspective, what it looked like for obviously voluntary organisations, charities, social enterprises, schools.
Yeah.
What it looked like within that social value ecosystem and what the challenges were. And I don't know why, as humans, we like to make everything so complex. So we take something that could potentially be quite simple, and we add all of these layers on top. And so for me, Kind Currency was a journey that's the evolution of that today is Keepl Social,
right.
Because what we did with Kind Currency, going back to the learning aspect, I did sit and read, like bits of psychology, from one of the top universities in the world around, sort of commerce and behaviours, what good businesses, and I needed to understand all the complexities within it. But we did just a lot of on the ground activity that generated impact, but it allowed me to get into the bones, of organisations. So what was difficult for SMEs, what was difficult for sole traders, what was difficult for large organisations, what was difficult for the public sector, how that looked from the other side, from the social sector, and to try and really understand that there was lots of opportunity out there. But if there's lots of opportunity, why are the needs in society growing so substantially at such a fast rate?
Which they are.
And obviously, I didn't envisage in 2020 that things were going to actually get a lot worse.
Yeah.
So obviously I'd wrote that on a piece of paper in the height of the pandemic. And when I think back now and what we've gone through, not just in our local communities, but in that sort of global community sense as well, it's unbelievable, and we are at crisis point with a lot of
absolutely.
The needs in society, especially in the UK. We've got an amazing public health service that's struggling, but one of the things that I wanted to try and address with the development of the platform was the fact that we've got an amazing social sector that's made up of 300,000 social organisations. And that's organisations from really small grassroots voluntary-led projects all the way up to, to through schools, hospices, through to your big, large multinational charities. And they're all trying to do their best by society. But there was an alarming figure that came out off the back of the cost of living crisis at the end of 2023, that basically it said we were going into 2024 with 50% of those organisations struggling and fear of closing their doors. As we've seen as we went through 2024, the closure of those doors started to happen at rapid pace. Now, if we've got an education system and we've got an NHS and our other public services that are struggling, as we know, a lot of our local authorities are in debt and really struggling to meet local demand. What happens if we don't keep the doors open of those social organisations?
Absolutely. It's that impact, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Impacts back onto the public sector, and we know that that's already at breaking point.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about, Kind Currency was about understanding the problems to create a solution that would enable some positive action to support that social value ecosystem to be as efficient and effective as possible, and to create cohesion within the sector so that we started to really address the needs in society, whilst we also supported everybody within it, so we have to support the SMEs to be able to then support local communities.
Yeah.
So, and it's that way of thinking. So that was the whole evolution of Kind Currency.
Right. So was Kind Currency then, was that something because you'd mentioned you doing a lot of voluntary work, was Kind Currency fundamentally a voluntary project? Or
Yes.
Right.
It was something that I'd obviously started, and then it grew, and it grew substantially. At
what point did because what were you doing alongside that then? Because you mentioned about doing things to keep the pennies coming in.
So I had, when I went into the pandemic and I wrote on a piece of paper what if kindness was currency, I had obviously my business, which has been a sole trader business that was in the events industry. So I'm obviously very creative. My background is very much within the creative sector, and which I transferred a lot of those skills into a lot of the roles that I was doing on the social impact side of it. So I chaired a children's charity for a long time, and obviously a lot of our activity was through events and creative activity, to fundraise. So I was always the type of person that would think, right, I could get a grant here for £5,000, but it's going to take me X amount of time, and what's that? And then we might not get it. And what could happen at the end of it? Or we could do this, and actually have a more positive outcome. So I was always a doer. It was like, we need to do some activity to get something, and that's the same as what I did with Kind Currency. But a lot of those skills stem from having an events business.
Right. So you're no stranger to business then. Did you have jobs prior to your events?
So when I'd had jobs when I was younger, so I actually went into self-employment in my mid-20s.
That's quite young.
Mm-hmm. So, but that was to manage my needs. Do you know it?
Yes, do you know what? Throughout this podcast, that's a fairly common theme. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of I speak to a lot of people, some people, because the concept of packing in a job or leaving what many consider to be the safe route, I'm not sure it is anymore, of employment, to start and do something for yourself. Lots of people consider that brave. I suspect you're among the group that view it as something that you have to do.
Yeah, it's very much that I had to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know, it was really, I'm not sure if it's better now, because obviously I've not been in employment for a long time. I've got friends that are employed, and I obviously listen to their experiences. And my husband is employed. Yeah. I'd say employment, the safety aspect around employment is obviously your annual leave's paid. Yeah. You've got that you've got that salary, or whilst the business is doing well, it's coming in and it's secure. you have got sick leave. So if you are unwell, you can take sick leave. You've got a pension. I think that's one of the biggest aspects around taking the leap into self-employment, when it's for the purpose.
Yeah, you kind of have to. You've got to get your finances in order, haven't you?
Yeah.
Although again, there is the other perspective of, well, if you put yourself under that pressure, you almost give yourself no option other than to make it work. I'm not sure that one would certainly not for me anymore, but
yes,
but it is there.
It is, and it's not easy being. It wasn't easy being. I've got to remind myself now, because I'm with a great team of people with Keepl Social. Obviously, there's a team of 4 of us, which is Chris, Carl, and Carl, and we've all got our strengths within the team.
Yeah. Are they employees or?
So it's basically, we're co-founders.
Right.
So we're all co-founders of Keepl Social, and obviously, as we said before, it is a digital product.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that obviously I'm very creative and socially impact driven, but it is a digital product, and I've got no tech experience whatsoever. So the team is made up of the individuals who have got real core strengths in what is needed.
I think that's it.
Deliver this.
It's something that I've spoken about in a number of previous podcasts, about, because for me, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, and I like doing everything myself, but there comes a point where you can't.
Yeah.
And I think if you know what you are good at, you know what you can focus on, and you can buy in that help, which then frees up your time, and that can't really be understated. And that sounds like what you've managed to do with Keepl Social there. If you've got a team of people and a team of co-founders that are equally, I'm assuming, are equally as passionate as you are.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Because it is all about that underlying message for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I feel really grateful. Is I came towards the end of my understanding with Kind Currency, so I'd obviously been on this big journey with it, and we'd actually delivered a substantial amount of impact while we were testing different solutions on the ground, and so I knew that we could remove the barriers what people were experiencing and directly target opportunity towards where the needs were in society. I just knew that what the ecosystem needed, and I knew digital was the answer.
Yeah.
So but being non-technical, so I then had to have that self-motivation to go out there and put my neck on the line and share this whole piece of work that I'd done, and say, this needs to be a digital solution, and knock on a lot of doors. And fortunately, I knocked on the right door. And
always useful.
And Chris, Carl, and Carl opened that door, who obviously they are such good people, and I felt that instantly. And when I started to share with them, so their understanding of social value had come from mandated social value. So they'd had to do social value as part of a contract requirement. But what they knew it as, we've got to do this bit of social value, let's just go and paint the local scout hut. So when I started to speak to them about the problems within the social sector, and that we had 50% of the social sector at risk, and then what that would look like from a public service point of view if we lost that support, but then how our businesses are struggling anyway, and then they're trying to do their best and they want to do good by society, but they need support. And actually we all made it simpler, and we put the systems in place to allow everybody ease of access to it. It would enable it to work a lot more efficiently and effectively. And once I started to explain to them, I could see it was a bit like brainwashing. Do you know, I'm explaining it to them, which is all real, but you could see that whole them taking on. And then when they started to, for themselves, learn about it, their passion just went off the scale in terms of right, we need to do something about it.
And so you've now got a passionate team, all committed.
Yes, absolutely. And I will never ever take any credit for any of the technical ability of what the platform can do.
But as you say,
Because that is-
it's about
yeah.
a team, it's about the passion.
Yes.
And I dare say the future for yourself is just to continue growing what you're doing, because this really does sound like a business that's driven by that passion.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for us, this has to work because this works for the benefit of society.
Yeah.
It's for the betterment of all. Do you know, it's to enable businesses to attract more business. It's enabling businesses to save time and resource and energy and money. Do you know, it's enabling the social sector to have their needs met. It's supporting the public sector in delivering.
It's basically, it's a win-win for everything, isn't it, for everyone concerned, benefit society. I hope that everyone gets on board with this. It sounds absolutely fascinating. And Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I can only wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you
so much.